8 tactics the Communist China used to defeat the US were outlined by a Chinese advisor. These tactics including fostering enemies of the US, causing international problems, controlling the US market, etc. Chinese President Xi Jinping's new ambition has been revealed, which is to lead China to replace the US as the world's only superpower by 2049. Welcome to Beyond the News. I'm Faye. Today we'll have a deep look at the multiple strategies the Communist China applies to subvert America while strengthening its own economic, military, and diplomatic power. The following tactics we'll be talking about are from a well-known Chinese professor Jinxuan's speech on Sino-US strategic philosophy back in July 2016, which was recently uncovered by the Epoch Times. Who was Jinxuan exactly? He is a professor and the Associate Dean of the School of International Studies at Beijing's Renmin University of China. He is referred as the teacher of the state by Chinese netizens. He is a prominent scholar and advisor to several powerful Chinese Communist Party bodies, including the Department of China Organization, which focuses on human resources, and the so-called United Front Work Department. In the speech, Jin explained the Chinese leader Xi Jinping's desire for national rejuvenation and his ambition to be the world leader. According to Jin, the strategy to topple the US has two broad components: weakening America through both internal and foreign sources, while strengthening the Chinese regime. Jin used the metaphor of a company to illustrate the US-China dynamic. The US is the company's president, and China is the vice president who wants the top job. Jin said, the US is a middle-aged man who is good-looking, has strong capabilities, and has support from most employees. However, as the vice president who wants to replace it, Jin explained, they first need to create the conditions to make it easier for the US to make mistakes. Secondly, we should make the US as busy as possible in dealing with problems to the extent that it will feel depressed and want to give up. Thirdly, we should become intertwined with the US so it cannot attack us. We'll then have a detailed look at the 8 strategies Jin illustrated in his speech. The first one he mentioned is to interfere with the biggest event happening every 4 years for the presidency of the US. You know what I mean? Because I can't say it as it is, otherwise the video is likely to disappear on YouTube. And I would like to emphasize the speech was delivered back in 2016, so the Communist China has the intention 5 years ago. Jin said, we should bring the pro-Beijing candidates to power. He noted that with the US population standing at about 312 million across 435 congressional districts, there were roughly 750,000 residents living in each district. And the voting rate in the US is about 30%, which means around 200,000 residents in each congressional district will vote for the representative in that district. And normally, the difference of voting between two candidates is 10,000 or less. If China has thousands of votes on hand, China can become the real boss of the candidates. And China's ambition is to control at least the House of Representatives. He said, the best scenario is that China can buy the majority of the members of the US representatives, making it into the second standing committee of the National People's Congress of China. Number 2 strategy is influencing the US political system by ramping up Chinese investments. This gives the extra benefit to enriching Chinese businesses and the Communist Party. He said, the Chinese regime wants their business people to control the US market and to develop their businesses in the US. Jin explained, the investment opportunities in the US are relatively good. It is open, more open than the Japanese and European ones. And the US market strength, including aspects of market size, transparency, and stability. Number 3 is to foster enemies of the US. Jin said, The Chinese Communist Party's strategic task is to make sure that the US has no less than 4 enemies at any time. That is how many are needed to stretch the US resources while bogging the government down in domestic debates over which threat to prioritize. For instance, before World War II, the United States had 2 adversaries, the Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. Jing said, the Americans debated over and over about who is the real threat. If the US has 4 enemies, it will totally lose its direction. Jing concluded, the US has got only 3 adversaries for the moment. Terrorism is definitely an enemy. Russia looks like another one. Definitely, the US treats China as a competitor. It is not enough. In his speech, he revealed over the past few years, the Chinese Communist Party has tried hard to cultivate Brazil into an adversary of the US, making heavy investments in Brazil to draw support on global issues, including taking stances against the US. But that was unsuccessful, he said, because Brazil didn't want to be improved. Now, the Communist China has given up on Brazil and is trying to find a new candidate, making it a US adversary. The fourth is to cause international problems or conflicts for the US. Jing said the Chinese regime was at a strategic advantage due to the United States' role as a global enforcer. Whenever there is a crisis in the world, the US is obligated to intervene to maintain the global stability, which in turn drains the US resources and diverts its attention away from China. As examples, he cited the Afghanistan and Iraq wars, which he described as completely not strategically valuable endeavors for the US that cost the US $6 trillion and 10,000 soldiers' lives. The result was wasted 10 years without being aware of China's development and let China grow big. Another possible tactic would be to sell the CCP's holdings of US Treasury bonds to precipitate a debt crisis, Jing said. According to the US Treasury, China currently holds nearly $1.1 trillion in US Treasury securities, and engaging in drawn-out negotiations is an effective strategy for bogging down the US while giving the Chinese regime time to focus on developing itself. According to Jing, the US won't take punitive actions against the Chinese Communist Party, such as sanctions, and instead focuses on preparing and carrying out the discussions. However, the Chinese regime, which has no intention of negotiating in good faith, uses the breathing space over the course of negotiations to solidify its power both inside and outside of China. Number 5 strategy is stealing US technologies. Jing said China's industry has a large output but lacks certain technologies. In the past 30 years, we bought technology, 46% of which were from Germany. But the United States has the best technology, but it doesn't sell to us. The Americans think that Chinese hackers steal a lot of their things. This may very well be true. Key technologies for China's J-20 fighter jet and the DF-41 intercontinental ballistic missile was stolen from the US, he admitted. Number 6 is to expand the territory of the CCP regime. Take the South China Sea as an example. It is a home of rich fishing grounds. It is also one of the world's major shipping passage locations. Despite a 2016 ruling by the International Court that China's territorial claims were unlawful, the Chinese Communist Party keeps claiming the South China Sea. Beijing has sought to bolster its claims by building artificial islands and military outposts in this area. He said the Chinese regime will continue to create more features in the South China Sea. As for Taiwan, Jing said China has more ways to bring Taiwan under control. For instance, the regime could bribe Taiwanese politicians, ban trade and tourism from China, convince the few remaining countries that recognize Taiwan diplomatically to switch to mainland China, block Taiwan's participation in international organizations and meetings, etc. Influencing international organizations is also one of the strategies in defeating the US. Jin said the Chinese regime's goal is to control all these international organizations, including the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, the World Health Organization, the International Olympic Committee, etc. He said, "We can appoint someone who speaks Chinese to be its leader." The last but not least, Jin said, is to build global influence by leading projects that including the Belt and Road Initiative and the Free Trade Area for Asia-Pacific FTAAP. The Belt and Road Initiative, we've talked much in detail in previous episodes. You can go and check it out if you missed them. One thing that could add is that Jin said the ultimate purpose of BRI is to team up with the industrial power Germany. Then, there will be no position for the US in the world's industrial playing field. And for the FTAAP as a free trade proposal among 21 Asian Pacific countries would also open a conduit of influence for the Chinese regime. So, after going through all these strategies, do you think the Chinese Communist Party successfully deployed these strategies? How do you think the US can counter it? Please leave me a comment below. Alright, that's all for today. Thank you for watching Beyond the News. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Your like will force YouTube algorithm to recommend it to more people so others can see the true evil nature of the Chinese Communist Party. I'm Faye. I'll see you again very soon.